The night was unusually quiet over the mountains when the sky split open with a streak of silver light. For a moment it looked like a shooting star, bright and beautiful, but it didn't fade. Instead, it grew larger, blazing across the horizon before disappearing behind the hills with a thunderous crash. The ground trembled and animals scattered from the valley below. Far away, radar systems picked up the impact, marking it as an unidentified object from orbit. No one knew what it was, but by morning the area was sealed off, and a small team was sent to investigate. Among them was Dr. Lena Hart, a biologist who had spent her life studying rare life forms and protecting endangered species. She wasn't the kind of person who chased fame or danger, she chased understanding. When her team reached the site, the air smelled of burnt metal and ozone. The valley was filled with smoke, and pieces of strange, glowing material were scattered across the ground. It didn't look like any aircraft she had ever seen. The metal wasn't charred like normal wreckage. It pulsed faintly with light, as if still alive. Lena stepped carefully through the debris, her boots crunching on the blackened soil. "Be careful," one of the officers warned, scanning the area for radiation. But Lena barely heard him. Her attention was drawn to the silence, an eerie, deep quiet that felt heavy. No birds sang, no wind moved. Then, through that stillness, she heard it, a sound so faint that she thought it might be her imagination. It was soft, trembling, and alive. A cry. She froze, listening again. There it was, a weak whimper, almost like a child trying not to be heard. Her heart quickened. "There's someone here!" She called out, but the others were too busy examining the wreck to notice. She followed the sound, stepping over twisted pieces of glowing metal until she reached the heart of the crash site. There, half buried under a panel, was a small shape wrapped in a web-like material that shimmered like liquid glass. Lena crouched down, brushing away the dust. The sound came again, a tiny whine, frightened and desperate. Without thinking, she reached out and gently pulled at the material. It softened at her touch, almost as if it recognized her warmth. Beneath it, she saw movement, a small creature curled tightly against the cold ground. It wasn't human, but it wasn't terrifying either. Its skin glowed faintly blue like moonlight on water, and its chest rose and fell quickly, trembling with fear. For a long moment, Lena just stared, unable to speak. Every instinct told her this was something extraordinary. Not a monster, not a threat, but a living being fighting to survive. She glanced back at the others still searching the site. If they found it, they would treat it like a specimen, maybe even destroy it. Slowly, carefully, she removed her jacket and wrapped the small creature inside it, holding it close to her chest. Its body was warm but fragile, like holding a bird with a heartbeat too fast for its size. The crying stopped, replaced by a faint hum, almost like a sigh of trust. Lena looked at the wreckage one last time, realizing how much had just changed. She had come to study a crash. Instead, she had found life from another world. As she turned to leave, the morning light cut through the smoke, and for a second, it looked like the valley itself was waking up. Lena didn't know it yet, but what she carried in her arms would one day change the way humanity saw itself and the universe around it. Lena brushed aside a sheet of twisted metal, its edges still hot from the crash. The morning air smelled like smoke and wet earth, and her gloves were blackened from ash. She leaned closer to inspect a glowing surface when something tugged at the back of her coat. The pull was gentle but sudden enough to make her freeze. For a heartbeat, she thought it was falling debris, but then she felt it again, a small, quick movement, like tiny fingers or claws. Her pulse quickened. Slowly, she turned her head. Clinging to her shoulder was a small creature, its thin claws hooked into her coat fabric. For a moment, neither moved. The creature's wide, luminous eyes met hers, filled with fear and wonder. It was no monster, no horror from space, but something fragile and alive. Its skin shimmered in the morning sun, colors shifting softly between blue and silver, like water reflecting light. Its chest rose and fell rapidly, breathing in shallow gasps, and its small body trembled against the cold air. Lena didn't dare move too quickly. Her breath slowed as she whispered softly, "It's okay. It's all right." The sound of her voice seemed to calm it. The creature blinked, head tilting slightly as if listening. It had sharp little teeth, but they weren't bared. It didn't look ready to attack. It looked scared, lost, and desperate for safety. A breeze blew through the valley, carrying the faint hum of the wreckage behind them. But in that moment, the world felt still, just the two of them, human and alien, staring at each other like lost souls trying to understand. Lena gently lowered her hand, palm up. "It's okay," she whispered again. The creature hesitated, claws tightening for a moment, then slowly released its grip. One small, glowing hand reached forward, touching her glove with curiosity. Its skin felt smooth and warm, almost alive with faint vibrations like a heartbeat. Encouraged, Lena stayed perfectly still. "You're safe," she murmured. The little being made a quiet sound, somewhere between a chirp and a sigh, and then, to her surprise, it crawled into her arms, curling up against her chest. Its weight was barely noticeable, its warmth delicate but real. She wrapped part of her coat around it, creating a soft cradle. The creature tucked its head under her chin and let out another soft sound, almost like a purr. In that instant, something changed inside Lena. The fear she had felt earlier melted away, replaced by a deep instinct to protect. Whatever this being was, it wasn't dangerous, it was just a child, stranded and alone on a strange world. The wind carried the faint crackle of fires still burning in the wreckage, but Lena hardly noticed. She looked down at the small life in her arms and knew that her discovery wasn't about science anymore. It was about compassion. Somewhere between the stars, a creature had fallen to Earth, and somehow out of everyone, it had chosen her. Lena knew that if anyone discovered what she had found in the wreckage, the creature's life would be in danger. The government teams would study it, test it, and possibly destroy it out of fear. She couldn't let that happen. So, as quietly as possible, she wrapped the small alien cub in a thick blanket and took it with her into the mountains, where she lived in a small wooden cabin surrounded by pine trees. The path to her home was steep and hidden, perfect for keeping secrets. When she reached her cabin, she placed the creature on the soft couch near the fire. The flames cast a warm glow across its shimmering skin, making it look almost magical. It blinked slowly, its glowing eyes reflecting the light, and then let out a faint sound, like a sigh of relief. Lena began caring for it in the only way she knew. She offered it small pieces of fruit, carefully watching to see what it would eat. To her surprise, it didn't seem afraid of her anymore. It sniffed at the fruit, then took a tiny bite with its sharp teeth. A moment later, it made a soft sound, something that sounded like approval. Lena couldn't help but smile. She started, writing notes in her old research journal. Responds to fruit. Body temperature warm. Heartbeat fast but steady. Shows signs of learning quickly. Each day she recorded its progress, trying to understand this little life that had fallen from the stars. The cub learned at a speed that amazed her. When she waved her hand, it copied the movement. When she tilted her head, it did the same. Within a few days, it began responding to her voice, chirping softly whenever she spoke. Once, when she laughed, the cub let out a sound that almost matched her laughter, a high, cheerful note that filled the small cabin with warmth. That night, while feeding it, Lena finally said aloud, "I can't keep calling you it. You need a name." She thought for a while, then whispered, "Niru, that suits you." The cub blinked and repeated the sound, "Niru," in its strange melodic tone. Lena gasped softly. It was learning her language, mimicking not just sound, but emotion. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them grew stronger. Lena began to notice that Niru could sense her moods. When she was tired, it would curl beside her quietly. When she was sad, it would make gentle humming sounds that somehow eased her heart. But despite the joy it brought her, Lena noticed something else too. Every night, after the cabin lights were turned off, Niru would climb to the window and stare at the stars. Its glowing eyes reflected the endless sky, and a soft, mournful sound would escape from its throat, a cry filled with longing, Lena would lie awake listening, realizing what that sound truly meant. Niru missed its home. It wasn't just a strange creature she had saved. It was a child who had lost everything familiar. Lena sometimes joined it by the window, placing a comforting hand on its shoulder. "We'll find a way," she whispered. "You're not alone." Niru would look at her then, eyes shimmering, and rest its small head against her hand. In that quiet mountain cabin, a human and an alien child sat side by side, two souls from different worlds bound by something universal: kindness. Lena didn't know what the future would bring, but she understood one thing clearly now. Protecting Niru wasn't just about saving a life. It was about protecting the last piece of innocence left in a fearful world. The days after the crash grew tense. News about the strange object that had fallen from the sky spread quickly, reaching scientists, reporters, and government officials. The world wanted answers, and the authorities weren't about to let a single clue slip away. Helicopters began, flying over the mountains, their spotlights cutting through the night. Military patrols moved through the valleys with search dogs and scanning equipment, determined to find anything that proved life from beyond Earth had reached them. From her cabin window, Lena watched the lights in the distance, her heart heavy with fear. She knew they were getting closer. Niru seemed to sense it too. The usually curious and playful cub became restless, pacing near the door and making soft warning sounds. Lena tried to calm it, whispering gently, "It's all right. They won't find us." But even as she said the words, she wasn't sure she believed them. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the last light faded, she heard the sound of tires on gravel. A military vehicle had stopped on the road not far from her cabin. Voices carried through the forest, low, cautious, professional. Lena quickly turned off her lights and pulled the curtains shut. The sound of boots crunching on dry leaves grew closer. Niru climbed into her arms, trembling slightly, its glowing eyes wide with fear. "Shh," Lena whispered, holding it close. She could hear the soldiers now, talking just outside the cabin. "We picked up a signal here," one of them said. "Might be a survivor or some kind of equipment from the wreck." Lena's heart pounded in her chest. If they entered, she'd have no way to explain the small alien hiding under her coat. She held her breath, praying they would turn back. That was when it happened. Niru stiffened suddenly and let out a soft, low hum. The sound was unlike anything Lena had ever heard, deep and resonant, like wind moving through metal. It vibrated through the air and made the hairs on her arms stand up. Outside, the soldiers' radios began to crackle and distort. "Command, we're losing signal," one of them said. Static filled the air. The others tried adjusting their equipment, confused and frustrated. "Let's move out. This area's dead. We'll circle back later," their leader ordered. Within minutes, the sound of their boots faded into the distance. Lena exhaled, relief washing over her. She looked down at Niru, who was now calm again, eyes dimming back to their usual soft glow. "You did that," she whispered in amazement. The cub tilted its head as if understanding her words. That night, after the danger had passed, Lena sat by the fire, staring at the small creature sleeping peacefully in her lap. She realized that Niru was far more than a lost alien child. It had abilities beyond her understanding. It could sense emotions, detect danger, and even control frequencies that humans couldn't. But with that realization came fear. Humanity wasn't ready for something like Niru. If people found out what it could do, they wouldn't see it as a miracle. They would see it as a threat. And fear, she knew too well, could destroy anything beautiful before it ever had a chance to be understood. The peace that Lena had built in her quiet mountain cabin could not last forever. Secrets like hers had a way of slipping through cracks, no matter how carefully they were kept. One afternoon, while gathering supplies from a nearby town, she noticed a man watching her too closely. His eyes lingered on the small glow from the blanket in her backpack where Niru hid. She hurried home, but by the next morning, the silence of the valley was broken by the distant hum of engines. The world had found them. Within days, news cameras surrounded her cabin. Military trucks lined the dirt road. Drones circled overhead. And in the middle of it all stood Lena, shielding Niru with her body as the first flash of cameras exploded in the darkness. When the truth reached the public, it spread faster than any wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Alien life found on Earth," and Doctor hid extraterrestrial creature for months. Within hours, millions were watching the story unfold. Some people were in awe, calling it the greatest discovery in human history. Others reacted with fear, claiming the creature was dangerous, a spy from another world, a sign of invasion. Television channels argued endlessly, showing clips of Niru's glowing eyes and gentle movements. To some, it was proof that life beyond Earth could be kind. To others, it was an omen. Governments from around the world began arguing about who had the right to study the being. Scientists demanded to take it into their laboratories. Politicians wanted to use it for power. Protesters filled the streets with signs, half reading "Protect the Visitor" and others shouting, "Send it back." The noise of the world grew so loud that it drowned out everything else. Lena was taken to a secure facility for questioning. Niru kept close by her side. Under the harsh lights of a press room, she was asked again and again how she found it, what she knew and what she wanted. She answered the same each time. "It's just a child. It needs care, not control." When the government finally allowed her to speak publicly, she stood before hundreds of reporters, her hands shaking, heart pounding. The camera's red lights blinked like eyes staring straight through her. She could see her reflection in their lenses, small, tired, but determined. Niru sat beside her, peeking out shyly from behind the podium, its skin glowing softly under the lights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lena took a deep breath. "I know many of you are afraid," she began, her voice trembling. "But fear is what ends civilizations. This child, because that's what it is, a child, chose to trust me. It could have hidden, it could have fought, but it didn't. If a being from another world can trust a human, maybe it's time we learn to trust something beyond ourselves." Her words echoed through the room, captured by microphones, sent across satellites, and played on every screen in the world. Some people cried when they heard her. Others shouted in anger. The debate grew fiercer. Nations split in opinion, half seeing a path toward unity, the other half preparing for war. But in that moment, as Lena stood before the cameras, holding Niru's small, glowing hand, something undeniable happened. For the first time in history, the entire planet was looking at the same thing, not each other with hatred, but at a tiny creature that had brought them all to the same question. What did it truly mean to be human? Her voice, though quiet, carried across the world, and for a heartbeat, even the noise of fear fell still. Under Lena's care, Niru changed quickly. What had once been a frightened, trembling cub was now a curious and bright creature that seemed to understand more each day. Its body grew taller, and its skin shimmered in new colors, each hue representing its mood. When it was happy, its skin glowed with soft gold light. When it was curious, the colors turned pale green. At first, the scientists and guards who watched from afar thought it was random, but Lena realized the lights were part of how it communicated. Each pattern of color, each soft hum had meaning. She began keeping notes, recording every flicker and sound, and slowly the world started to understand that Niru wasn't just reacting. It was speaking. People all over the world watched through screens as Niru's behavior was studied in careful detail. It responded to voices, to music, even to emotions. When someone nearby was angry, the light on its skin dimmed as if trying to calm the tension. When someone was sad, Niru would emit a low, soothing hum that made even the hardest faces soften. Scientists discovered that its body released a harmless frequency that slowed human stress responses, lowering fear and aggression. Some called it a biological miracle. Others called it manipulation. But anyone who stood near Niru for long felt a sense of peace that couldn't be explained. Even soldiers who guarded the facility found themselves sitting quietly, talking instead of shouting. Lena noticed the biggest change in herself. She had spent her life studying how species survive, but now she was learning something new, how they connect. She realized that Niru wasn't just here to survive. It was here to understand. It imitated her gestures perfectly, learned the tone of her voice, and even began forming its own soft words. The first time it said her name, barely a whisper, she almost cried. It wasn't just repeating sounds, it was communicating with intent. That moment was broadcast around the world, and humanity watched in awe. Soon, people began questioning everything they thought they knew about what it meant to be human. If an alien could feel empathy, could learn kindness, and could calm fear just by being near, then maybe humanity had more in common with the universe than they believed. The arguments that had once filled the air began to soften. Nations that had fought over ownership of the creature now sent teams not to capture, but to learn. The loudest voices of fear started to fade beneath the growing sound of curiosity. Every night, Lena would sit beside Niru and watch as it played with the lights on its hands, creating shapes that looked like constellations. "You're teaching us, aren't you?" she whispered once. Niru looked up and smiled, the light across its body forming the same soft gold it showed when she first held it as a cub. The world outside was changing because of this bond between two beings from different stars. And for the first time in centuries, humanity didn't feel alone. They were finally learning that connection, not conquest, was the language of the universe. It happened without warning. One quiet night, the world looked up and saw the sky come alive with color. Streams of light, brighter than any aurora, shimmered across the stars. At first, people thought it was a natural event, a meteor shower, or some new satellite phenomenon. But within minutes, news networks began reporting the same thing from every continent. The lights weren't falling. They were moving in formation. Massive shapes appeared among the stars, silent and silver, descending toward Earth. Panic swept across the globe. Sirens blared in cities. Governments ordered people indoors. Military bases went on high alert. Everyone feared the same thing: invasion. After years of peace since Niru's arrival, the sky had once again become something to fear. Lena watched from the same facility where she and Niru had lived for months. She stood by the window, her hands trembling as she stared at the horizon glowing faint blue. "They've come for you," she whispered, turning to Niru. The creature, now taller and more graceful, looked back with calm understanding. Its skin pulsed with shifting lights, soft blues, steady golds, and faint silvers that rippled like language. It wasn't afraid. Instead, it walked slowly toward the open courtyard outside, where soldiers had already gathered, weapons raised but hands shaking. Lena followed, her heart pounding. "Please," she begged the guards, "don't do anything. Let it speak." The air grew heavy as the enormous ships broke through the clouds, silent and majestic. They hovered above the ground, their surfaces smooth and glowing like living metal. The world held its breath. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the engines and the thundering of hearts. Then Niru stepped forward. Its body began to glow brighter, colors flowing in patterns too complex to describe, waves of light pulsing upward into the sky. The soldiers stared in disbelief as the ships above responded, flashing the same sequence back, faster and brighter. It wasn't a battle signal. It was communication, a language of light. Lena stood still, tears in her eyes as she realized what was happening. "They're talking," she whispered. "They're answering." The exchange lasted for several minutes, the night sky glowing with rhythms of light that seemed to sing across the heavens. Then, as quietly as they had come, the ships began to descend, not in aggression but in peace. The ground shook softly as one of them landed nearby, opening a circular door that glowed white. The light spilled out across the field, and shapes began to appear inside, tall, luminous beings with forms similar to Niru's, their movements slow and graceful. Every soldier lowered their weapon without command. Fear turned to awe. One of the beings approached Lena and Niru. It looked at Niru first, the lights on its body flickering like emotion, then turned to Lena. Though it didn't speak in words, the meaning was clear. Gratitude. The hum that filled the air carried warmth, almost like a melody. Lena felt it deep in her chest. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't need translation to understand what they were saying. They hadn't come for war. They had come for thanks. The next morning, the world changed again. Images of the peaceful meeting spread everywhere. The ships, the lights, the moment a human and alien stood side by side. People who had once feared invasion now saw unity. News headlines read, "They came in peace to thank humanity." For Lena, it was the moment everything had led to. Proof that trust, not fear, could reach even the stars. As the ship slowly rose back into the sky, she stood beside Neeru and whispered, "You brought them home?" Neeru looked at her, its skin glowing gold, and for the first time in history, the universe felt just a little smaller and a lot more human. Years passed, and the memory of that night, when the sky lit up with alien ships and the world stood still, became part of history. Children grew up hearing about it in school, reading about it in their textbooks under a new chapter called The Day of the Cub. It was no longer seen as the day humanity faced fear, but the day it learned to overcome it. In classrooms around the world, teachers spoke about the little creature who had once fallen from the sky and the woman who had protected it when no one else dared to. That single act of kindness had changed everything. Nations that once argued about borders now worked side by side, sharing knowledge and technology learned from Neeru's people. The air was cleaner, the oceans brighter, and space travel was no longer a dream. It was a shared mission between two worlds. Lena watched this new world unfold with quiet pride. She was older now, her hair streaked with silver, her steps slower, but her eyes still carried the same spark of compassion that had guided her years ago. Every time she walked outside her home, she could see ships from Earth and Neeru's planet gliding together through the sky, carrying scientists, explorers, and teachers who worked to build bridges instead of walls. Humanity had changed, not through conquest or power, but through understanding. People no longer spoke about us and them. They said we. The line between human and alien had blurred into something greater, a shared identity of beings trying to make the universe a little kinder. Neeru had grown into a symbol of hope and connection. As Earth's first ambassador to another world, it traveled between planets, speaking, not with words, but with light and music, about unity and trust. Whenever it returned to Earth, crowds gathered to greet it. Children would hold small lights that glowed in the same soft colors as Neeru's skin, waving them in the air like tiny stars. Lena would always be there too, standing quietly in the crowd, smiling as she watched. She never tried to take credit for what had happened. When people thanked her for what she had done, she always said the same thing. "I didn't save the world. Kindness did." One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, Neeru visited her once more. They sat together in her garden, surrounded by the soft hum of life. The air carried no fear, only peace. Lena looked up at the evening sky where a faint trail of ships shimmered far above and said softly, "You know, when you first fell here, I thought I was protecting you, but it was you who saved us." Neeru turned toward her, its glowing eyes gentle, and the light on its skin flickered in warm golden waves. A silent thank you. Years later, Lena's words became part of history, too. Her quote was carved into the stone walls of the first human-alien research center. "It wasn't power that saved us, it was kindness." Those words reminded every visitor of how close humanity had once come to destroying itself, and how one small act of compassion had changed the course of the stars. The predator's cub had chosen Lena, but in truth, it had chosen something far greater, the part of humanity that was capable of love, empathy, and growth. From that moment onward, the universe didn't feel cold or unreachable anymore. The stars no longer seemed distant. They felt like home, a home shared by every heart that dared to care beyond its own world.